So tonight's Finance Committee meeting is called to order. Good evening, everyone. I would like to have representatives of the school committee come up, please, whenever you're ready. Okay. Just send Brett up.
What are you saying, anonymous
There you
over
go.
there?
You want to join me?
Brett's got it all?
Grab a couple extra chairs. So we
It's like
actually,
a symbolic coming to the table.
yeah.
See? Right.
We also have a quorum here this evening, so, and we have posted our meeting, so I'm going to call the school committee meeting to order at 7:02. For purposes, so we now have a joint finance committee, school committee meeting going here, so.
And what I'd like to do is start off with introductions.
Sure.
Everybody, just an introduction. So if I could start, Brett, and go around this way.
Sure. I'm Brett Argel. I'm the chair of the school committee. I was also a member of this committee about 2.5 years ago. That's where I started with my kind of town involvement.
Okay.
Matt Wojcik, Town Administrator.
Good evening, Howard D'Amico, Finance Committee Chair.
Phil Landry, new member here at Douglas, on the FinCom.
Heather Moore, FinCon.
Sandy Kuipers, FinCom.
Dick Vandenberg, FinCom.
Lisa Brown, School Committee. Kelly Grady, School Committee.
Courtney Geegan, Business and Operations Manager.
And Kevin Maines, Superintendent.
Okay, great, thank you, welcome. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
All right, so I think what I would like to touch on, and I think everybody in the Finance Committee was aware that tonight was a meeting we tried to put together for the purpose, for those who were on the committee the last couple of years, of maybe trying to get the school committee in an extra time early in the process, because it's been my experience that often by the time school committee gets in front of us, I feel like a lot of numbers have been preset and we're locked in a little more and a little more to what the math might be and might be available for school committee. And I think the school committee has done, frankly, a fantastic job in the 4 or 5 years I've been part of FinCom, trying to create some stability, some sense for the parents and the kids of the goals of the school committee and what you guys can offer. And I think we've come a long way from where we were 4 or 5 years ago with those types of things. One of the things that rings in my ear, echoes in my ear from myself a year or two ago next door, I think one of the things we talked about, I used the phrase that I thought that the Douglas school system could be sellers, that we've got structure and potential availability. And I saw their heads, in front of me kind of just nod a little bit. And so Brett knows maybe, 6 weeks ago now, you and I reached out to you or vice versa, and we met a little bit.
Yep.
And I asked you to maybe be able to come forward a little bit tonight and talk to us very early
Yep.
about maybe different projected numbers or different projected percentages that might be different thresholds that the school committee would look to, be able to get out of this year's budget.
Yeah.
And what the things were that were different at each of those levels.
Sure.
And I hope you're prepared to address that a little bit.
We are, to a certain extent. Like you said, it is early, so we appreciate being here and giving an early look, but it is very early, so it's probably not to the level that you used to seeing from us, because at that point, we usually are very late in the process, and we have our budget developed. But Mrs. Keegan's been kind enough to put together some numbers here. Do you have enough to share with everyone? Or we can... but really what it talks to is some projections right now on things that we do know, actually not even know, things that we can project on some assumptions. And there's not even a lot that we can project on assumptions right now, but what this lays out for you is what our projected increases in staffing budget would be, assuming a 1.5 COLA, percent COLA. Now, right now, we are just starting negotiations on our next contract, so we have no idea what that COLA will end up being.
We're not presupposing that in any way, shape,
No, not at all.
Not at all.
The
Not at all.
1.5 is basically the average of the COLA from the last contract, so I think that's why we settled on using that for this, but to assume that that's where this is going to end up, would be presumptuous at this point. So, but it does lay out to you, under that assumption, how much our staffing budget alone would increase. And we also talked about, comparing, to that to what a 1.8% increase in our appropriation from town would mean. That's what this top section of the report here lays out for you. So you can see that Courtney's calculated that our staff budget would go up by $371,000, roughly, under that 1.5% COLA assumption, as well as all the steps based on where the teachers are currently in their careers. And a 1.8% increase over our FY 2020 appropriation would be $244,000. So you can see there's already a gap there, just with what our COLAs would be. Lots of notes and disclaimers here.
Yeah.
I do see that. I'm impressed by that.
I think I even beat Jean by those, don't I, a little bit? Yeah.
Right.
And she's also provided just, a table down here below that shows what our current year, FY 20 appropriation was, as well as, what a 1% to, 1.5, 1.8, 2, 3, so on, would mean for us.
Matthew, do you have any sense also very, very early of what your office might be perceiving might be the ballpark number you're looking at for a school committee budget increase?
I really don't. I can play with any number because this is a spreadsheet model, so you can, it's infinitely flexible, you change it and see where it takes you. I'm reluctant to say because we've got two, I think, unfortunate events on the time horizon. One is we're looking at a very large increase in our property and casualty premiums. We had a very large claim last year. It's going to hit us for the first time this coming year, and it's going to be an astronomical increase on what's already a large number in the budget. But until I have a better sense from Maya just how hard they want to hit us for that, I'm not at luxury to say that the rest of the budget's clear. And that, coupled with, and I'm a little bit concerned about this because this week alone, our treasurer was invited to a meeting with the Worcester County Pension Fund. Just go over what's going on there. They've made representations to us in the past that they had a fairly clear idea of what our increase was going to be every single year in our annual required contribution, our ARC. Of just about a 9.95% increase every year over year for the foreseeable future. Now, that's a big number, and that's a massive increase every year for the town. But the rumor this week is that it's going to be larger than that, that it's going to be into the double digits. So,
Percentage?
yeah.
Okay.
So we're already kind of tight. I'm going to be circulating our personnel budget on the municipal side at the end of this meeting, so you can see we're about 33% of our budget's pretty clearly locked. So those variables are going to have a lot to do with what we can afford to do for the schools. I'm somewhat more optimistic about the impact of changes in school health insurance, the self-insured approach. Right, knock on wood. Douglas, our claims experience typically starts off real slow and then gets high because we have a deductible plan. So everybody has to chew out their way through their deductible before they start filing claims. Whereas everybody else is kind of a flat line because they don't have a deductible, so they start paying right from the outset. But at this point, after the first quarter of full experience, our medical loss ratio is 40%, 45%, which is very low. So we're hoping that trends, if we just end up, the goal was to end up around 80% of what we contributed would be paid out in claims, 85. And that's, still the most likely outcome because the actuaries looked at this. But that's the other big variable on the expense side of the town budget that we need to resolve. I started off with, we started off with a 1% locked into the model just to make 5 years go,
Yeah,
right?
sure. Yeah.
And last year we actually doubled that. This year I would say I'm cautiously optimistic we won't have to stick to 1%, but just how much we can put in, I don't know.
What was year over year last year?
Did it mean 2.18, something like that?
Yeah.
It was, you know, two, it was roughly 2. Yeah,
Roughly
it was-
2.
yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, what was the topic where you heard rumors that it would be double? What?
Not doubled, but double
Or
digits.
double digits for what?
Worcester County
Our
pension.
contribution to the Worcester County pension.
Oh, okay.
Not that 9.95 is all that short of double digits.
Right.
Yeah.
Just take that
just a
double
little,
digit.
It sounded more like 11 to 12 to me, and I didn't like the sound of that at all.
All right.
Excuse me, Matt, was that possibly from the, did they have a shortage in funding? I haven't been on the town side for a while, so the shortage of, remember originally they had the 2028 was a proposed date for fully funding, and I don't know, is that part of that, or do you think?
I didn't attend the
Did you
meeting.
catch up? I'm just curious, yeah, because that could be it.
I try, you've heard me say it before, Mr. Chairman, I really encourage the FinCom to have the representatives of the pension fund here to explain themselves, where they stand. They just had a leadership change,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
so they may have been going through the numbers more carefully. I know there's been some discussion around the mortality tables and the implementation.
Okay, so back to that funding,
Mm.
yeah, okay, makes sense.
The first item you addressed, that you've got a concern with the insurance, when will you have a better idea on that number?
I've built in, just for starters, I built
Sure.
in a very aggressive, just so I would have some,
Sure.
because you can always back off that, but you
Right.
can't,
Yeah.
building back
Yeah.
up to it's
Yeah.
bad. Maya notoriously doesn't give us our premiums until actually after the town meeting. We usually put an estimate in the budget, because they haven't given us an actual premium. We're just going off, what we do at this time of year, we have our coverage interviews, so we review all of our coverages with the representative from Maya, and decide whether we want to increase or decrease certain thresholds, and review whether or not we're adequately insured. And they give us a preliminary indication. The preliminary indication is we're going to face 3 really difficult years of penalty for that claim. So,
Have you got a number built into this year for that? Year
I'm
one?
starting off, I'm going to start off between 12 and 14% increase.
Increase. Okay.
Workers' comp is also part of that. Our workers'
Okay.
comp is up a little bit too.
And what is that typically year over year? from
That's not
increase?
I mean, that's typically, it's just not a big number. The overall property casualty number is a 6-digit number,
Yeah,
so it
yeah.
really moves our budget around. Workers' comp, it just doesn't move it that much. It's largely a function of claims. I'd be hard pressed to give you a precise number of what
Okay,
year over year
all
looks
right,
like, but we
okay.
can give you that number. We'll find out.
But you have a number put in at the moment, right? A number really
Yeah.
that won't move because between now and May, because you won't get more information between
We'll
now.
try to get them to tell us before we do the warrant
Right.
and the explanations and the,
But you have
Why?
that number generalized already. Okay.
yeah.
When will you have a better idea of what number either you or Board of Selectmen want to propose as a percentage increase or decrease for
Well, that's the other reason
school?
for me to keep my powder dry. I haven't discussed this with my managing board yet, so I don't want to get over my skis with them, because it will be their budget. Now, we are trying to push up these conversations, so that the board will largely be done its recommendations well in advance of that run-up to town meeting, so that this committee would have at least 2, 3, 4 meetings where the board's already completed its work and now you're reviewing, rather than kind of parallel tracking.
Or
that.
maybe the other way around.
Yeah,
So
possibly.
we have a number that we set to you guys, that you review.
I think it's a conversation, and it doesn't really
Okay,
matter to me
all
who
right.
goes first. as
But
long
you
as
you don't have timing already addressed or scheduled for when you could anticipate the number that board wants to come out with?
Yeah, you're just a little ahead of me, Mr. Chairman. I'm pretty darn happy that we got the personnel budget done.
I'm just looking to get
Because
an
it was
idea.
so complicated, it was like, oh my God, down to
Okay.
pennies.
All right.
With the treasurer and the finance director. But that piece is the most heavy lift. So the department heads now are only charged to look at their expense budget. And then the finance director and I will drill down on the insurance and pension stuff. and health insurance and property insurance. So that's, I think we're way ahead of where we were last year in terms of being prepared to at least ballpark some numbers.
Okay.
Do you mind if I interject here?
Not at
If you
all.
don't mind that? To be honest with you, Howard, if you don't mind my saying,
Sure.
this is very early, even, I mean, I would love to have some wonderful numbers, but
Yeah.
I understand the town side very well, as you all know, and this is very early for, so it's actually making me a little bit nervous. I can imagine how he feels hearing the question, but you know, I agree with Matt. We're all, really, all the focus right now is on the expenditure part of the budget. And they really do need the time to put, because the worst thing to do is actually put out something in advance and have everybody prepare with that premise, and then have to go backpedal after, kind of what he said about a couple of his numbers there as well. But even in the past, we didn't get anything until February. Even when we you know, used to have meetings and go over, and we had that one sheet, never mind the cherry sheet, Chapter 70, things of that nature.
Corey, who's
You know.
"we" in that statement? We didn't have anything till February, when you just said that. You mean the town, you mean,
Oh, yeah, with the town, well,
Yeah, okay,
when myself and the superintendent and Jean and the town administrator would meet, that was, I don't think it was ever before February, because it does take time for the town to put, there is a lot of key, very large numbers on the town side that they really can't until they get those figures. So I wouldn't really be expecting that at this time.
so I guess what I was hoping to do tonight, and maybe I've got some of that, a little more of that understanding, and I appreciate that. Nonetheless, is still to kind of understand, it always has felt to me in the past as though by the time you guys got to us, even you might feel that everybody else around you has locked a number that they'd like to present to you. And versus the number you'd like to present out. And so
Yeah.
I wanted to talk a little bit, and you and I talked about this in terms of if you've got any identification yet on a couple of numbers and the different, Kevin, you've always been great at really being able to outline some of the programs the system would really like to be able to either maintain or introduce.
Sure.
And I think I'd like to have our board here, you know, really on a much more of a macro scale, some of those ideas and concepts. And so as we think through and hear all the other numbers coming out to us in the next couple of months, have an idea of what we've heard and liked and thought might be worth trying to protect or look to have money for, if it's available.
Right, so in some very lean years, as you know, Howard, we were able to still not only sustain, but actually, I feel, grow and provide opportunities for our students that we weren't able to provide in previous years. As you know, if you were to go back 7 or 8 years, it was always cut, cut, cut. The committee did take a risk, and they did commit more money out of the school choice to try to hold us whole and turn around the choice out numbers. Kids were staying, and we offered some new programs. So, for example, one of the new programs that we brought in this year, one teacher, she's teaching all 3 grade levels at the middle school. She's teaching STEM. It's a rotational class. They come in and it's been just a phenomenal hit. It's been great. You know, we hired a entry-level teacher, and she's there all the time and putting a lot of hours in and coming up with great activities, and the kids are really gravitating because it's really hands-on activities. So they've taken over the library, and they've done catapults, and they've done building bridges and so forth. So really beneficial stuff that they don't realize how much they're learning. They're just having fun creating. So as simple as that position was, it impacted 3 grade levels in every student in the middle school.
Yep.
With one position.
Yeah.
And it also let us take advantage of a $100,000
Right.
grant that we had secured without having the position
Right.
to supply some materials over a 3-year period. So,
Right. So,
you know,
yeah.
if we didn't make the choice to actually hire the teacher, that $100,000 grant is out the window,
Right.
along with that opportunity.
And that was last minute. That was probably in July, I think, we made the commitment to it, and we were able to hire somebody.
in August, yeah.
In the beginning of
Yeah.
August.
Yeah.
But it was great. It worked out really well, and Brian Delaney had the initiative to go out and try to secure this 3-year grant that Brett was talking about. It was $100,000 in materials and supplies. And they'll be an active partner with us. He has Boston Digital coming out next week to present to our students in the STEM classes as well, so really beneficial. So that's it. My point is that that's an example of living within the number and being able to bring in just one position, but impacting an entire school building. So, you know, there, as you know, it was probably 3 years ago, when I first came on board, I was charged by the committee to sort of develop a plan moving, what we saw for the district moving forward, what some of the things. And we have added, you know, some of those things along the way. You know, one of the things that was, 2 years ago, I think one of the additions we had was an adjustment counselor at the high school. Again, one position, working with 4 grade levels, the return on the investment has been phenomenal. She's great young educator who is really active with the kids, bringing in programs, working with the students who have social emotional needs and so forth. It was a missing component for a number of years. And that, again, is just one example of one position that we were able to add.
And I guess my question is, those last 2 examples were able to be additions in just the last year or 2.
Correct.
Off of, you know, what we just talked about was last year's year over year was 2.18. And you were able to fit those positions in to those numbers, right?
Right.
Those.
Right.
Yeah, but to say to fit within those numbers, it's a bit difficult because a lot, when we set our budget in March, April,
Yeah.
it's approved at town meeting in May, there's still a lot of unknowns at that time. We don't know what our circuit breaker reimbursements are going to be. We don't know what school choice is going to be. We don't know how the previous school year is going to close out.
Right.
So a lot of times when we're adding something in August, say a STEM teacher, it's because some of those things ended up being a little bit better than what we could have.
Correct.
Well, that's kind of
You know,
what I'm
reasonably
that's
projected
the
at the
double
time.
secret that
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand.
Right.
Yeah.
So I have to be
It's taken me
brutally
years to
conservative.
really
Yeah.
garner that
Yeah,
occurred.
so when we
But
when we
that
were
is
talking
to
to you
my
in May,
question.
that STEM teacher wasn't in the budget because 2% wouldn't have gotten us there.
Right,
You know,
but
we
the
needed some things to go right over the
2.18
summer.
with the things that happen
Well-
after a town meeting.
Yeah.
And with some success here and there,
Right.
then you've been able to find the money to be able to do some of these
Right.
things. And so,
So for clarification, it was in the budget. It was something that we did not include in the budget because
Well, yeah, it was in
the
our
money
needs,
wasn't
yeah,
there.
yeah.
quite a higher number than the 2.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So it put us over.
Yeah, it was in our
That's
plan, but it
definitely
was
what I do,
something that
yeah,
we
so I don't
could,
have
yeah.
to
Right.
do so much work pulling things out. Yes.
But one of the things, Howard, about that I think is really important that everybody understands, is that was partly that was due partly because our school choice numbers were good.
You're getting better. Your numbers are getting better.
Yeah,
What we've
definitely.
talked about, the selling.
On both
Right?
sides, school
Yeah.
choice in the revenue for the school
Sure.
department, but also school choice out. The
Sure.
assessment has gone down on the town side, which is assisting as well.
And I concede, I'm not hiding my agenda at all, but I'm a believer that, that I'd like to see more money in with folks that are doing a great job being able to manage it, budget it well, and have the vision to make it a year, 2 years, 3 years later, continue to grow the math right back in of school choice in, school choice out, and that paying for itself. Okay. So what I wanted to do was get an idea of base number tonight, not holding you to it, but then wish list number 1,
Yeah.
and what's in wish list number
And you
1.
have that on
Yeah.
page
And then wish
2,
list
right
number
underneath
2.
your.
Page 2 of what Courtney handed out is a wish
The line from the movie Philadelphia, I'm going to use on you. Walk me through it like I'm a 6-year-old, if you
So,
don't mind.
The first page kind of
You
gives
know-
you your
I'm not going to
baseline.
admit to being that old, Mr. Chairman.
But just, if you would, and I know we get the handouts,
Yeah.
verbally walk me through
Yeah,
it.
so there's just generally, the first page is supposed to get at that kind of baseline, just
Okay.
to give you a rough idea of, you know, based on just what we know about our staffing budget, how much things are going to increase overall, and, you know, how that compares to, you know, a range of different
Yeah.
increases that you might see there.
Yeah.
The second page gets to, you know, a defined list of things that we would want in above and beyond our current service levels on the second page. And I'll let Kevin kind of walk you through that. It's not a prioritized list here.
Not at all.
It's like your second page here, it's just listed by which school it falls into.
The accounts.
I think everyone here would have maybe different thoughts on what the priorities are. The science teacher, something we've been talking about for a number of years. STEM is still a big thing, so we can get into the details on all those.
So
Any question?
again, bear with me. So on page 1,
Yeah.
where we started the discussion tonight, the 1.8% increase year over still leaves you 126 and change short based on an anticipation of COLAs.
Yeah,
Just COLAs.
based on
Well,
this
okay.
assumption.
Well, based on just an assumption, just
Sure,
for degree of
yeah,
magnitude,
yeah,
nothing for no
Yeah,
other purpose.
I understand.
Yeah.
But even the
Wanna say that
1.8
probably
leaves
about
you
times.
that number short of, if you will, level staffing, right? Level programming.
Right.
So for a moment, bear with me, and let's presume all those numbers, and then even presume the 126 is also funded, and so you're at your 371. What's the first step next?
Okay.
Well, remember, it also doesn't include any other increases in the budget. You can-
Now, I know Jean's not here, and so you're trying to fill in for her with
Oh, no,
those
I fill in,
exactnesses.
yeah, we fill in for each other.
I know.
We do, we help each other out. We speak the same language, we're like
Courtney,
this, yeah.
I got it. I get it.
So, Howard, I don't know if there's a copy to your left that might be a little bit
Okay.
easier to follow
Okay,
along with me.
Right? Yeah, probably, yes. Yeah, yeah.
So,
The story.
if you were to look at 5 years ago, 3 years ago, when I came up,
Yeah.
these are the things that were, these are the last few things that have not been able to be brought forward over the years. So it's sort of the final couple of pieces.
These top 3?
Correct.
Okay.
So the first one is the science teacher, and I've spoken on this quite a bit, and actually Matt and I have, and Brett have done some interesting attending at different events, I'll call it that way, with someone who had some insights. But I'm going to say this, that the issue is, at the high school, we still see a good number of students, for example, 4 students decided to go to North Fork Aggie this year. So a little bit more than we had anticipated, and it's a hit.
Yeah.
It's huge.
We could never do what Norfolk Aggie does. Could never do it. And that's the reason why we pulled away from that group that we were working with, is we could never become a true vocational school with large engine and all that other stuff that was going to go along with it. But we do know that there's an interest within our student body, because we surveyed them, around animal and plant science. So a teaching position that would be added to the science department would allow us the opportunity to introduce a first entry-level course in animal science, entry-level course in biology, and also add a biomedical. And then the expectation would be that over time, we'd be able to offer a second course in that program and give our students an opportunity to be exposed to animal science and also horticulture. Along with that, you know, the vision is that we would have the opportunity for our students to go to Douglas Orchard. We've already, this was a couple of years ago when we met, and they were in favor of us having our kids intern down there to work with the small animals, to work with their apple orchard, and now they've expanded that, as you know. We originally had an iteration with an agreement with Southwick and also with Tufts Veterinary at one point, under Dr. Samuels, who was the driving force behind this. My sense is that over the next couple of years, you could reestablish those as well, if
With that one lead teacher.
it just opens up those other opportunities that might say to the kid who's going to Norfolk, if I can get, 2 of these courses, and I can also get 2 of these courses, 2 courses in animal and 2 courses in plant as electives, it might pique my curiosity. Do I really want to go into that field?
What's our cost out of one child to Norfolk Aggie? Ballpark?
22, 23,000?
One child?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
Including transportation.
All right.
That's without
Yeah.
transportation.
Basically, if you had 2 kids who chose to stay here, you've almost
Covered that.
the cost
If
of that
if
teacher.
that class alone or that program alone,
Right.
like you said, building on it a year later.
Correct.
Might be more likely.
Right.
Because you've got a little deeper curriculum and the relationships have
Yep.
developed.
So that's
Okay,
one
okay.
teaching position, and the other piece is that biomedical piece, which would allow, and again, keep in mind that the science department at the high school would probably be 6 or 7 teachers. Now, somebody who has an interest in biomedical might be the person who really makes that run, or if it's forensics, it makes that really go. We used to have biotechnology in the school. The teacher who taught it had left. No one really filled that void, but we opened up anatomy and physiology instead. And the reason we opened up anatomy and physiology was because we really wanted to get those courses that might benefit kids who are thinking about a medical field. So anatomy, physiology, biomedical all sort of plays in that way. So along with all the APs that we presently offer in the sciences, it's a nice track for a kid who really might be thinking, I'm going to go to med school, to get really exposed to a lot of opportunities. If we can offer the biomedical, we already have some of the courses that support the biomedical. So that one position addresses a couple of areas of academic interest that might meet the needs of students who are thinking, do I want to go to BVT for their medical program? Do I want to go to Norfolk Aggie because I'd like to do animal sciences and so forth? Maybe we can hold them here. And not only that, maybe those kids who are in Uxbridge who are driving all the way to Walpole might say, well, they've got those 2 or 3 courses over in Douglas. Maybe I'll just stay in our school choice in. And I think it's a win. The animal and plant science, I think, is a real win for us. We talked about our manufacturing group building a greenhouse for us on site so that they can be doing the animal the plant science all year long. Starting a community garden in the front of the building so that our special education program would maintain it throughout the course of the summer, and we would be able to provide some of that food to the local food pantries and so forth, but they're getting the experience with that. So all of that with
One spot.
one person. And then at the next one that's there is a STEM teacher.
Do you want to pause on that? Do you have a
Okay.
question?
'Cause
Yeah, so just the 22 per student that you were talking about, is that consistent no matter whether it's Norfolk Aggie or BVT? Or
They're a little different.
Big difference.
Totally
That's
different.
Norfolk Aggie.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
if they go, just if they go to Norfolk Aggie.
So that means, so Norfolk, I'm just trying to clarify this
Yep.
in my head, so that we would lose certain amount of revenue per student, and then we would have to then pay out some of
Correct,
the
yes.
town.
We
would
don't, we
have
don't
to-
get any Chapter 70 money for those students if they go to
Right.
either BBT or Norfolk Aggie, so we're losing,
And we cover their
5,
their
6
cost.
thousand, I forget
Yep.
what
Is
Chapter
that
70 is per student.
22 a total net number?
I don't know, if that
loss?
22, does that even include transportation?
I don't think it does, no.
Earlier, it
doesn't.
doesn't include.
From
I think
Norfolk
Norfolk
Aggie,
Aggie
so
might
above
end up closer
per-
to 30,000
per kid.
per
Okay.
per
So if
student.
there's 4 kids
Oh, no,
that
your
decided to go,
transportation's
that's
not really-
That much.
88,000.
You're at 90,000
No
before, yeah.
Yeah.
And just real quick, Kelly and Lisa, right? Are you both also on board in favor of this?
Absolutely.
Right, I just want to, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
we've been driving this for a
I expected that
while.
the answer, but it's great to hear it as well.
Yeah, again, like
And I
Kevin
appreciate
said,
it.
this plan from Williams Forward has been in place for a while. These things,
Right.
nothing here is really that new to it.
And again, we've been chipping away, Courtney's been saving all the dimes and nickels that she can, and they've been willing to, so we've been able to do all those things.
Did you have follow-up? Yeah.
No, I'm good right now.
Okay, I'll go on to the next one then.
So we lose the revenue on one side,
Yeah.
and then we have to pay, the town has to pay out on the other side.
Yeah, that's it, that's kind of a,
Yeah,
Right.
so the net
it's
impact.
kind of a double hit kind
Right.
of thing, so I get it.
If it can truly, if I can use the word
15 and
blossom,
50
get
for
it?
BT.
Plant science. If it can really blossom, we could really keep students here, but we could also see
Yeah,
students
I-
coming here.
Kevin, I got it,
And-
right?
Yeah.
Right? You and I, the business development guys, that's business development.
Yeah,
right?
no, that's great, that's great
With the
stuff.
facilities already there.
Right.
And just, I've had 2 kids that have graduated fairly recently, so I feel like I've got kind of, I know a lot of kids at the high school, and I have no doubt that this would fly.
Just
It
one,
just-
just one program.
There's so
Would
many
have
kids.
8th grade kids and
It would not be,
parents.
8th grade, when they come into the 9th grade, they would be able to
But I
access.
mean,
But it's
8th
a
grade is
selling
they're
point for eighth
choosing
grade.
which way to head
Correct.
as they head toward 9.
Right.
This is the type of
Right.
thing parents are watching.
Correct.
And kids are watching.
So I'll just add my 2 cents. My daughter is at BVT.
Right.
She's a sophomore. Had you had this in place, she
Right.
would not be in BVT.
Right.
Right.
And I don't want to, I'm not going to talk disparagingly about our school, which is BVT. Our AP courses, which they also offer, but they have to offer it on a modified schedule, whereas we have 180 days with additional time for those APs. So naturally, our students are being exposed to a greater depth of the AP curriculum than they can possibly do there, just because of the schedule that they have.
I don't disagree. Like I say, I see
Yep.
value on both sides of the table. I fully support to keep the kids here.
Yep.
Had you had something like this in place,
Yep.
she would not have gone to BBT.
That's an interesting comment to make. That's
that's
right there,
for me-
right?
There's the
That's-
third
that's the-
customer right
That's
there.
the example, though, right?
That's the
And I
reason
did,
why.
like, my daughter almost went to BVT and decided not to, but this,
Okay.
she wouldn't have even thought of going.
Correct.
If that was that.
You have the programs in place, 50 grand to me is like,
No, I think maybe one of the next questions is, why haven't you done it already?
No, we understand, we understand.
Again,
It's-
the-
yeah,
the
right.
STEM
Right, I know,
became a
we-
priority
we-
this
we-
year.
we-
on
we-
priorities.
Well, we also
But
came
this
from
is a
being 6
necessary-
feet
Yeah,
under
sure,
looking up at the
absolutely,
bottom.
Yeah,
absolutely.
so.
So a good
Yeah.
example, that's a good
Yeah.
question, though. That one position that we hired with regards to the STEM at the middle school covered every single student in that building, whereas this would have only addressed those students who are interested in animal or a plant
Sure,
science
fair,
class.
fair,
And so
right, right.
therefore prioritizing it, it just made more sense. But this is a win. I believe it's a win. I think we all agree that it has a lot of interest, I think.
Can you walk us through those next two?
Yep. So
Yeah,
the STEM
please.
position that we're talking about, it's a 1.0. Now, this is an interesting piece, Howard, if you look at it. Again, science, technology, engineering, and math, which is, we just added the STEM at the middle school. So obviously, we'd love to have it at the elementary so that it's a feeder to the middle school. And then obviously, we have plenty of STEM classes at the high school. Our plan would be to hire one teacher. That teacher would work in what they call the specials rotation at the primary and the elementary school, which means that students rotate through on a daily cycle. One day it's art, one day it's music, one day it's phys ed, and now this one day would be STEM, would be the fourth of them. So this one position will service every student from pre-K through grade 5. With STEM experiences. Again, it's not a full-blown STEM course, but they would be exposed to 25% of their school year would be exposure to STEM learning.
And there's zero of that currently at that grade
Presently,
level.
right now, there's a little bit. They do some robotics. Yeah, they do some STEM in the classroom, but
Okay.
this would be a
More
standalone.
dedicated.
Or it
on
would
that
work in
rotation.
collaboration
Yeah,
with the
okay.
classroom.
Yeah.
Okay,
It'll be much more robust, but they're
enough.
definitely doing what they can with what they have right now.
okay, fair enough.
Okay. So honestly speaking, those are the two positions left that we really feel we need to implement sooner rather than later, just because we think they're attractive and they have real benefit. I mentioned the special education teacher after that. So what we've done is we're moving towards a new model of delivery for special education services. So rather than it being a special education liaison who the kids come to for academic support and paraprofessionals helping in the classroom with the content teacher, we're now trying to marry the special education teacher in with the classroom teacher, and they're co-teaching collaborative experiences so that we just feel that it's a better return on the dollars spent, because the STEM teacher is a certified, trained, knowledgeable of all the IEPs and in all the ways in which to modify and make accommodations. So over the last couple of years, one of the things that we presented to the school committee was we were having a heck of a time trying to find paraprofessionals, because it's a full employment and it pays, a nominal dollar amount. So we're having a heck of a time finding them. And so we realized that we were short, I think it was 4 paras. And we added it up and we said, I bet we could find a special education teacher. Posted it, hired a teacher, worked out great.
Yeah.
So we started to go into that model. And so the plan with this would be that if we would add this additional special education teacher at the middle school, which is where we have a need for a grade 7 special education teacher, the expectation would be not that would be something that would be an additional. It would be that we would look at some attrition within the paraprofessionals and STEM positions I'm sorry,
Probably mostly
Not STEM.
in ABA, paraprofessionals in ABA.
It's staying STEM,
that's-
it's not
STEM.
STEM, it's
Yeah,
special ed.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So we would
This is-
reduce, because what ends up happening is there's, every year, some of the paras, they get another job, they don't
Sure,
return.
sure.
So it's just attrition, we'll just,
So that's something we could probably mostly self-fund through.
Yeah, I think I'm seeing that, yeah. Okay.
so what that would do for us is, right now in the middle school, we have a grade 6 and a combination grade 7, 8. So 2 teachers, 3 grade levels. This would allow us to have 3 teachers, 1 for each grade level, and they would also work in collaboration with the flex special education teacher, which handles more of the students who have some social, emotional, or behavioral concerns, but they flex into mainstream classes and so forth. So that is the other piece. We don't see that as an addition, we see that as attrition more than anything else.
But it would have a net increase cost initially, correct?
Probably not. If we're eliminating, say, two paras and an ABA, it's almost, for an entry-level teacher, it's almost.
It would, in that room, if you will, between May's town meeting approval and September when everything starts,
Yep.
and that period where you've been able to manage your money and see what changes make.
Yep.
In that period, the 50 extra in would also result in 50 saved, is what you're suggesting,
Yeah.
in theory,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
In its shortest theory.
Correct.
So it might not necessarily be, you don't really need per se a $50,000 increase there,
Right.
because you may be able to find it on your own in the
Correct.
Yeah.
margin period.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the
again,
things,
Which has proven to be very successful.
no, and I respect all that work that makes that occur. One of the things I think I would like to see then is, as you get before us the next time, is something that can give us, and I've come to recognize that we can't have you, approve an amount and say it's got to be line item for the following events. But I'd like to see something that shows X is a number that might be what lots of other people are suggesting should be the number, and then X plus 100, or 150, 100, that would be to say, this X plus 100, we're pretty certain where we want to go with it is to fund these couple of top positions.
Yeah.
We can't guarantee that, but X plus 100 today happens to be these 2 positions we talked about in December. Did people follow that one? Was that clear enough,
Yep.
kind of what I was
Yep.
suggesting?
Yeah, so
Okay.
again, I think it's
Okay.
early in the process, but I think, we should try to get back to you. And again, if it's February, I don't know when the earliest we think we can have a first shot at the budget.
I don't, I'm just suggesting from our first discussion, and what you and I have been talking about now for years of trying to really grow this event
Right.
incrementally to make it, something that really keeps kids, right? Keeps kids, and even on a really macro level, might eventually draw kids from out of community, right? As parents start looking to what community they want to move into. And again, until somebody says to me, Howard, we're at capacity with our buildings and our, I want to be sellers.
Right.
So
And I would just say-
bring us a proposal.
Fortunately for the students of the Valley, all the school districts have the same mindset.
Yeah.
Everyone's
Yeah.
out there saying, how do we become more competitive? How do we add
Right,
programs?
right.
So as we're trying to do this, Sutton's doing this, Uxbridge is doing this, Northbridge is doing this.
And we've talked about eventually,
So-
collaboration where we lead the way on one,
Yeah.
and a different town leads the way on
So
another.
glad-
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that.
Aren't you?
Because
Is that a good segue?
that has already happened. It's already in place. The Blackstone Valley Superintendent's Consortium has already started. We offered a course this year. It was a manufacturing course offered by a teacher from Uxbridge. It incorporated students from the Valley who wanted to take the course. None of our students took it because we have manufacturing in our building, so the kids could do it firsthand. It just wasn't a suitable course for our school, for our students, because they can take it right there at Douglas High School. So next year, they're looking to expand. They're going to continue a second course in manufacturing. They are linked to the Ed Hub, which is in Northbridge, which is part of the Blackstone Valley Education Foundation.
Okay.
So they go there to use their machineries. It's a collaborative, and students from other districts. So it's already started. Next year, they're looking to add either a coding or a robotics or a combination thereof.
Who's they?
So the superintendents of the Blackstone Valley Consortium. So we have Paul Linsky. Linsky is sort of the chairperson of it, and he will be managing the oversight of these courses.
Does that mean our kids here in Douglas High can go participate
Correct.
in it?
And so a lot of it is online learning.
I see. Okay.
Right?
All right.
So much like we have the virtual high school in Douglas, we've done that forever. this is an online learning platform, but it also has an opportunity for us to get together in an environment where we're going to do hands-on activity for the manufacturing. So it would be the same thing for the coding and so forth. So that is already underway. Next year will be the second instance of it. We're hoping that eventually what ends up happening is that everybody is offering something that another school doesn't offer. So I always give this example. In Douglas High School, Brian McGrath teaches a microeconomics AP course. Nobody else in the Valley offers it. Doesn't mean that there aren't students in the Valley who want to take AP Micro, but their school doesn't offer it. He teaches the course online. Their students can then channel into him online. He's teaching the course for the Blackstone Valley Superintendent's Consortium. Not for us, it's an additional course for him that students from the Valley can now take.
And that's occurring already?
So we don't have that, it's not in place as of yet. That's the hope, is
That's the
that
idea, is that might be our contribution to this kind of consortium.
so there's a forensics course that's offered in another district. Hopedale was going to put that out as a possibility. So that idea is underway, and there's a pretty solid commitment to it from all the superintendents in the consortium. So that's
Everyone's kind of in the same boat. They all realize we can't all offer forensics. You know,
Right.
money's not there. We can't all offer manufacturing.
They-
How do
But
we
you
start
can make
sharing
it something
resources
Douglas,
and-
the other towns as well, but Douglas would be able to offer.
something.
Right.
I mean, it could be, in this case, it could be animal science,
Yeah, right, a couple years down the road.
you know?
Okay.
So that is underway, and that is looking to continue to grow. That's one of the things that's in this, if you look at the very bottom of the page, continued participation with the Blackstone Valley Superintendent's academic programs, which has a dollar amount for being part of it, but that goes to offset the courses that they're going to be offered and the expenses along with it. And then on the bottom of the page, we're looking to do away with science technology at the high school, and our teacher of science technology, John Giannet, has already attended a number of conferences, and he's looking to bring engineering to the high school, which we haven't had, which we're really excited about. He has drafting, he has manufacturing, we'd like to do engineering. So he's already attended a number of sessions, and so engineering, STEM, at the high school, instead of manufacturing, we're looking to go into construction science, which is a certificate program that they offer. We're already researched that, and we believe that we can enter into that. Our kids already take the same test that the Blackstone Valley students take, and we've actually outperformed them at level 1, but we can't go beyond level 1. We just don't have the machinery to have our manufacturing kids do lathes and things, stuff like that. We just don't have it. So this would give us an opportunity to work with a group out of Millbury that has the machinery, so our kids would go there, you know, like on a Saturday, or they might have a day where they go everybody meets and they have the learning experience there. So that's the engineering and construction, which we think, again, you know, not everybody needs to go to college. There are plenty of students who are looking not to go to college, but they would love to get into a career where they can use their hands. So the only other thing I'm going to mention in there is that we have already looked into, and we have already been actively involved with the group called Project Lead the Way, which is a national organization, but here locally it's out of WPI. And Project Lead the Way is basically trying to link grant funding for materials and supplies, not for teachers, but to support so that so school districts can offer those types of, so I mentioned that STEM position. That STEM position would be supported by grant money to purchase supplies and materials for that course if we get the grant from Project Lead the Way. Same thing with the construction, the same thing with the engineering, and we don't need it at the middle school just yet because we have that $100,000 grant that we're working off of. And then the other thing is, but I think this is a major concern, is our technology needs. That we have a high school that's 15 years old, 16 years old, and those desktops, those PCs, they're 16 years old, and they don't quite move as fast as.
Where's that line item?
At the very, very.
It's on the high school at the bottom, right in the middle, right smack in the middle of the high school.
On that sheet, it's at the
on my
bottom,
sheet.
yeah, but
On my sheet.
on the first sheet, it
Second page.
details a whole bunch of things there. Just while you're
The
looking at
estimated
that,
total.
you know, I'll
At the
just
very, very bottom for technology
Yeah,
needs there.
sure, that's the numbers, though.
I'll just
then
mention that we got
Chromebooks.
$45,000 this year as a budget kind of subsidy, I guess.
Right.
Senator Fatman and Representative McKenna secured verse as part of the budget. So
One-to-one Chromebooks,
again, in
everybody
addition to
knows.
Chapter 70, they were down here with the big fake check a couple of weeks ago, and we were all there for the photo op, and they helped us to get I don't know how many Chromebooks for the middle school.
Okay.
And I think that they've shown a commitment to helping us continue to try to knock these types of things off our list, and we're committed
work.
to
Great work.
staying on them.
Yeah.
Because this is a lot of good stuff has happened at the state level from an education funding perspective. We're not necessarily going to be the hugest beneficiary of that. I think they know that. No one really in the Valley is going to be a huge beneficiary of that, and they know
Fall in
that.
the
So they've
cracks
said,
all
okay,
the time.
these are the kinds of things that we can help you with.
Always.
$40,000 here for
Yeah, we'll take
technology. That's something tangible, something that they can get up there and make a strong argument for.
Okay.
So.
And I'm meeting with Senator Fatman and Representative McKenna on Thursday for the Sutton Douglas Community Support Network, and I do plan on asking him for
I
$64,000.
like it, I like it. We'll send you,
I'm being very
a
serious.
limo to get you over there.
I'm very serious. I just want to ask him.
Community
I'm in
support.
Maine.
It is indeed, and I gotta say,
I got it.
they were very good about it, and we would, if we didn't ask, we wouldn't have gotten it. We did ask, we did get it, so I'm
Yeah,
asking
great,
again.
Great,
That's
fantastic.
my
Great
main
work.
point with that is, I don't want folks to think, especially folks at home watching that, we're always just coming to the, residents of Douglas looking for handouts to, we're throwing every rock we can to try
Very
to,
good point.
fund these things. We're trying to
Very good
self-fund
point.
things, working with the state,
Agreement.
trying to, work with other districts, whatever it does, means to be able to expand our programs for our students. There's numerous ways to do it. Fortunately, a lot of them do cost money, and we do have to come in with budget increase requests, but there's a lot that we're able to do to improve our school, to improve our programs, to improve our culture, without that. And that's due to a lot of the hard work of Kevin and Courtney and the entire administrative staff, and our teachers. So.
Real quick, Kelly or Lisa, any other comments you want to add? Thoughts that you seem both eager over there, and I'm glad you came. You bring a lot to the table. Anything else you want to contribute that Kevin or anybody else hasn't offered yet? Feel free. Speak freely.
Well, I think we've been here long enough. We have been to see it go in the other direction.
Right.
Yeah.
So to see this and everything coming to fruition, I don't want it to slide back in
Okay.
any way, shape,
We
or
were
form.
both involved on the athletic boosters side back when things were really bad.
Yep.
And sports got cut and worked really hard to make sure that stayed. And seeing the way things have turned around, I've been so pleased because I had 2 kids that have gone through, and I have 1 more that's in there, and it's made me glad we stayed, which was really a question there for a while as to whether we would, but everything that has been going on the last 3 years, it's, and it's plans like this where the STEM teacher, 1 position, the whole middle school. The science teacher, 1 position, all those kids who would benefit from it. I think it's very strategic.
The building blocks have been put in place, and now you're just getting to the last of the building blocks. I think it's
And
what we need to do as both from finance and school committee, as well as the town. These are our future.
And we absolutely recognize that there's only so much money, and we can't do everything. But I think that's what one of the real strengths that the administration has done is to say, okay, this is what would help the most right now.
Yep, the building blocks.
I think the public should know also that the committee, and I can still remember Courtney saying to me that we can't slide back, and she was going to propose that we consider going a little bit deeper into school choice. When you look at it now, a couple of years down the road, it was probably the most important decision that was made because it basically allowed us to stay whole, stay stable, and sort of give the community a sense that we're not sliding back, we're moving forward.
I actually want to comment on that as well, kind of remind everyone historically, along with what you've all stated. We remember FY16 was a worse year, and in FY18, I remember the biggest thing for me in preparing the budget, and I said it to everyone, including the superintendent, that the biggest thing was the stability. We had to have stability that year, because we were just sliding, and it was affecting the town side as well. And then that comes back to affect up as well, and it just keeps going round and round and round, but you know, when you're 10 feet down, looking up to see the bottom, stole that from my father. But now, you know, there was 6 feet up, so we're looking up to see the bottom. But, so that year, we made sure no layoffs. We brought stability.
First time
because we
in
knew
many years.
without having that stability, without people at home, parents of their children, our students at home, like what you conveyed that you were feeling. If you're sitting at home saying, geez, I don't know, where are they going to be next year? This has been really bad so many years. Every year you're cutting 700,000, 800,000, and you're losing this. We lost a lot of programs. So for me in FY18, it was all about stability. We just could not lay off or get rid of any program. We worked hard to do that. And then, of course, thank you to the taxpayers and the work of the town and everybody involved. We had the override. Now, I understand that this wasn't about the schools, which is fine, whatever. But, you know, certainly in that plan, we were able to get the amount, the delta, which was almost just short of $700,000, to remain level. And again, stability. Then we went into the next, more into the, and believe me, I did a lot. That made me very nervous, I will admit. But I would never, they know I would never propose anything that I can't sleep at night. I just wouldn't do it. I would never propose it.
It was a calculated risk, and it's paid off. You know,
but it was a
yeah.
calculated but strategic and well thought out, and we also were looking forward prospectively for a few years down the road as well.
That's
So I
what we're
think,
still doing.
this is what we've been doing
what
is
we're doing
each
still,
year building,
right?
building, and then when we had that stability, we had the override, we were able to at least have that level. Then we were able to look at strategically at monies that we had available. Because before, there wouldn't have been any point in coming up with these plans. All we were doing is cutting $700,000, $1 million every year. It's not that past superintendents and administrative team didn't want to or didn't have them. There was no point. There was no money. There was just no way it was happening. So it just all kind of came in line, and it really is crucially important at this juncture that we continue forward. And again, to everyone's point, we're not asking for anything, you know, larger out there, and we're being very, very careful and strategic. And we're looking for, what is the phrase I always use?
Value added.
Yep. Value added, my phrase.
Yeah.
We look for value added in whatever we do, as far as making the proposals as well. So,
Okay.
Anything else for us tonight?
Questions over here, absolutely. If you don't mind, if you get a few minutes.
I'm going to send this over
Sure.
to you, Howard,
Yeah.
if you want to keep that with you. That's the presentation I did recently.
So when will you have a sense of how many bad kids will be that we'll have to pay for?
Say that
I'm not
word.
sure I understand what you mean.
Yeah, the word, I missed the word you used.
Special education?
Yeah, well, it's in here, sped, but, you
Yeah,
know,
okay.
we have to have people leave the district because we can't handle it.
Yes, right.
When do you have a sense of how many that will be?
That number's constantly changing throughout the school year.
That's about as big a moving target. It could happen, you know, in the blink of an eye. All of a sudden, there's a student who's demonstrating a need that we can't meet in our programs. And I got to tell you, we've added some programs over the last 7 or 8 years under Neely Urquhart's leadership. Is that we're constantly reviewing those students. We're keeping more and more students in district now with these programs. But it is very difficult to say to you right now that we know exactly how many kids are going to be going out next year. We're hoping that some of the students who have gone out can return if we can continue to meet their needs.
and the
But there's
cost
no
can vary
guarantee.
as well. The cost
Yep.
can vary as well.
Yep.
Because it depends on what is best for the child.
I'm not asking you right now, I'm
asking.
asking you when in the school year do you get a sense of what the next year will be? Is that
Now, this-
January, is it May, is it?
Well, the budget will be prepared, they're all preparing the budget now, and it's due December 20th. So Mrs. Urquhart will have available what students there are now. And everyone knows, because it's just part of the process year-round, anything can happen on any day.
So
We don't have any control over
So
who
we'll base
moves
the
in,
budget
who
off
moves
of
out,
basically the
or,
number of students that we
you know,
have currently out of district.
Right.
But again, the number could change.
That you'd expect
One way
for
or
that
the
to
other
enroll
down
next
the end of the
fall.
year.
Right.
A senior will come off.
right. So
Yeah, so
But
we'll
also-
factor those things
really,
in, but
a
yeah.
22-year-old is
Yeah.
usually.
Fair enough.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
sure. Yeah.
But also, we could have a situation, as Mr. Maines just indicated, where we could have a student in district that is budgeted for in district, because that is what we know at the time, but that could change. Or vice versa, as Mr. Maines mentioned, you could have somebody out of district, they can come back in district.
I think to answer your question, I would say yes, in May, we might have a pretty good idea of those who are presently out, whether or not they are going to transition back, because they'll have had their evaluation meetings and so forth by that time. But we won't know, I guess, to be honest with you, is somebody else going to have to go out, or is someone going to move in that might require an out-of-district placement as well? It's really a moving target. But to your point, we should know the students who are presently in and out of district placement, their evaluations are usually done by May, and you have a pretty good idea as to whether they're going to be able to return or stay in the out-of-district placement.
And then when do we,
Yeah.
when do we get the sense of the state reimbursement amount for that?
That's not until
Oh, that comes
October.
later on. They don't even file, the DESE doesn't even have the files ready until April, May.
Okay.
So that's done, that's later on. Yep, but what we do, and I have presented this actually to the Finance Committee in the past, is we do a, with loads of disclaimers, right, Howard? Where we do each individual student, we actually do a calculation, and we do an estimate, being prudently conservative, another one of my terms, with regard to the foundation amount, and then I'm always prudently conservative on the percentage, because I need an idea on what that is anyway, to figure out what I can utilize to offset our general fund budget with regard to circuit breaker as well. So I have to do a projection on this year's carryover, because you're allowed by Mass General Law to carry over 1 year's worth of revenue. And the reason that they have that is so you can have some flexibility for planning and budgeting purposes, because things can change dramatically. They can change dramatically overnight. That's just something that we deal with. It's part of our world on a daily basis.
How would you say over the last 3 years, say, just to pick a random number, it's been with the kids who left the district that we thought versus how many actually are? Have we been pretty close in guessing?
Oh, it changes. Well, I guess for
Yes
a
or
little
no?
bit
Have
of
we
way.
been
Yeah,
pretty
I would
close?
say, but it's hard to say yes, we were, or no, we weren't.
Okay.
The student, we have a pretty good gauge on those who are presently out, because Neely is constantly going for evaluations where she can anticipate whether that student is going to transition back to us or need to remain out. So that's the whole evaluation process that she engages in with any of our students that are presently in and out of district placement.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate too that we don't
sometimes
really project a number of
Yeah,
students. The budget will be based on the number of students that we know of as of a certain.
That's a
as
huge amount of money,
budget.
isn't it?
What's that?
It's a huge amount of money.
It's still a big amount of money, yeah. So to be able to project, again, we would base on the number of students as of a certain period in time, and based on, knowing which ones might be aging out, again, because it's not necessarily a graduation type of thing.
Right.
Or, having a sense of which ones may be coming back in, but even that, I don't know if we
What type of
project that until,
schools.
yeah.
Yeah, and we have.
So it would just be based on a certain number, but then we could
can
come back in
change.
September and a student could show up, move into district
Yeah.
that has an out-of-district placement, so it's just,
Or
to
something
say
can
whether we
change.
came in, whether we hit the target or not, I don't
The
think we're
answer is
necessarily
yes.
projecting to be able to hit the target. Yeah.
It changes.
So,
They've been very good at predicting as
Yeah.
best they can,
As best we
subject to
can,
the
but
fluctuations that'll
It has changed,
occur.
can change a
How's
great
that?
deal in a year, yeah.
There you go.
I can tell you that when August rolls around, we're always wondering who's moving in.
Moving in.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Are we going to have 15
Especially if we don't have
kindergartens
good
moving, and now I got to
services,
hire a
we don't
kindergarten
have
teacher?
good
Or,
services and-
yeah.
Right.
So that's part of it.
Yep.
Quick numbers question, are we a net negative or a net positive for special ed? Kids coming in from other
School choice, you
districts, coming in, or going out?
School choice or special ed?
Special ed is school choice.
Those
Special
are
ed.
two different things, yeah.
And forgive my
Yeah.
naivety of the system per
Yeah.
se, but I'm wondering, like, do people from like Sutton or other towns say, well, Douglas has a great special ed program, so we're gonna
Okay.
send
Oh,
kids
no.
to them?
Okay.
So glad you brought that up.
Or Douglas
Now we
has a
understand
bad
your
system, we
question.
want to leave that. That's just generally what I'm trying to get a sense of.
Yeah.
They'll
So
move to the district.
Sorry for the.
we're seeing,
Oh, no, you're
we're
very
seeing
clear.
more students moving into town
Yes.
because of the programs that we're presently offering.
Okay, all right.
Which, as long as they're in our building and we can maintain the numbers of educators that have an increase, we're okay.
Right,
It's,
okay.
it's when somebody moves in that we cannot meet their needs.
Sure.
So then it becomes a shared
You follow
process
that?
and then
No,
eventually.
yeah, I totally get it, I just, I was just macro
You can't-
thinking, kind
Well,
of.
so one of the things that is a little bit down the road, but we began discussing is because of our program, our flex program, and STARS program, which is our 18 to 22-year-olds, and I'm sorry, our Stripes program, which is 18 to 22, and our STARS program, there is a lot of interest in the program. People are trying to find out what we're doing and how we're doing it. Where it might be something to consider, I know there's been a lot of talk about collaboratives and so forth, but I don't know that we can ever do a collaborative, but we might want to start thinking about, can you take in 2 more students into your flex center at the high school? And what's the dollar amount for that, for them to enroll in it?
Okay.
Something to think about. We just started talking a little bit
If
about it.
someone is going to be a kid in our special ed program, don't they have to live in the community?
So yes.
Okay. That's really to the heart of it.
Yeah, see,
We have a school choice,
school choice.
could be a special
That's the
ed.
second part then.
Yeah.
That's
That's what I was
you're right.
thinking.
Yeah.
So a child and the parents can special ed school choice in.
Yes.
And then we have to pay for that, or their town pays for that?
The town pays a sped increment. Actually, that's different from, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Mays. There's 2 different things, and I don't know if your first comment was regarding some sort of tuition, some sort of separate program.
Right.
Right, I
But
took it that way.
students can go, certainly through school choice, can go from, and we do have, for the first time, we actually received sped increment. You get $5,000 per student when you school choice, and if that student does have special needs, we do receive, in addition to the $5,000, a special ed increment. And that we never got that all the years, and all of a sudden, the past couple of
This
years,
past
we are
year.
receiving that, yep. So those are 2 totally different things.
Right.
I don't want to
different thing.
belabor it, and it may be too late already. But could a student special ed in and have $100,000, no, well, yeah,
School
school
choice,
choice
yeah.
special ed in,
And then we
and
place
have
out of district.
$100,000 need?
I think if they school choiced in, they ended up with an out-of-district
Right.
placement, they would revert back to the
That's
town
okay.
resident.
Got it.
Yeah, out of district is a different,
Yes.
Explain that one
that's
again.
different. I'm
Right.
talking about in our own, in our
So
schools.
now
coming in.
they school choice in as a special ed student, but their requirements are so great that we don't already have the program, and they need a $100,000 IEP?
Well,
So that'll be like
out-of-district
out of district tuition.
Placement, sorry.
Yeah.
And rather than, oh, we're all going to school choice into Douglas and bankrupt the town.
Yeah.
Right, you know, instead, they've got, if we don't have the program and they're coming from out of town,
Right.
if they're in town, we've got to provide whatever program they need.
Yeah, whatever,
If they're
right,
right,
choicing in
absolutely.
and have a special need, and we don't have it, then they revert back.
Right.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
Oh, right.
So you said there's an extra stipend or amount that they do
Well, it's called an
give?
increment, a special ed increment. That's just for school choice students coming from another town.
Yeah.
You know how we accept school choice
Yeah.
students
Yeah.
coming in?
Yeah.
So if they have special ed services, we do get an increment from that, in addition to the $5,000 from the state.
So does that amount cover the expenses that typically, I guess? And I know it's an average.
It's tough
I
to
mean,
say one.
Yeah, that's
in other words,
that's hard to say, yeah.
are they net gain or
Yeah. Yeah.
drain?
Case by case, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's all
Yeah.
case by case?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good, very clear.
I have a question on the athletic trainer.
Yes.
What's the value added?
So,
Yeah.
we have not had an athletic trainer ever.
Many schools don't.
Correct.
Yeah.
Many schools run a significant liability by not having a trainer on staff. So we're obligated at that point, we would have to call a 911 if there's any kind of an injury that we think is that we can't handle as coaches. Our coaches have to be certified in first aid, but they're not certified in knowing there's a broken bone or whatever the case may be. The other thing is the benefit would be in helping students who are injured to get healthy, having a regimen in place where they can meet with the trainer on a day-to-day basis.
They can't go to their own physical therapist.
Well, they might be able to go to a physical therapist. I don't know.
The MIAA is going to start requiring
You're going to be mandated.
that,
This is a mandate.
Not
Could be,
yet.
not yet.
Not
but
yet.
it's coming.
Coming, it's coming
It's
from the
coming.
high schools.
That the schools provide a
Right.
trainer.
A certified, is this like a
Yes.
certified
Yep.
position?
Yeah. So what that position that you see posted there is a part-time position. In other words, they would come at the end of the school day, and they'd be available for games that might be played, that would be played, or to provide health services for somebody who's been injured and so on and so forth. There's been, I've been around for a long time. Very few schools that I know are going without trainers nowadays.
Okay. And then I have one more question.
Yeah?
When we say estimated cost, is that just salary or is that
That's the
benefits?
salary, right?
That's
So I mentioned-
only salary,
Right.
it's not benefits?
Right, and so I mentioned on the back there are some other things that would be expenses like textbooks and so on and so forth, or materials. But that's why I said the Project Lead the Way program, which is doing a lot of grant funding, we would hope to capitalize on that in order to purchase a lot of the materials and supplies.
But that's a good point, though. If we
Yep.
hire a science teacher or a STEM teacher, there is a
Sure.
corresponding cost on the town side
Yes.
for health insurance, for the health
Right,
insurance.
Yeah.
the
coverage.
town, but
town
it
side.
still comes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So
Yeah,
you're
but our
talking,
estimate is only for the salary, what we have
Salary.
included here.
Right.
There is a additional
additional
cost beyond that.
Oh, yeah,
so
perhaps.
Yeah.
do we have an idea of how much it costs? Like, say we hire a full-time employee, what the benefit cost would be for that employee as well?
Mhm.
Okay.
It's down to the penny.
If they take the
Well,
insurance,
depending
they
on
may
what,
not take it.
depending on which
Yeah, what's
insurance
the,
they
like, the
take.
fully loaded, fully
So it's
loaded?
not just the 50,000, there's additional cost as well?
You
Oh,
gotta
yeah.
figure somewhere between 23 and 25,000 for a family plan election.
Okay.
Individual plan would be substantially less, more half.
Okay, thank you.
And that's what the town pays, not the.
Comes on the town side of the budget.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and then, I'm sorry, I just have one more question, sorry. The STEM program for the grades pre-K through 5, for that age group, are they not being assimilated well when they get older, like to the STEM that we're doing now? Do they not
Right.
know what to do, or?
So they are exposed to STEM opportunities throughout the course of the grade levels as they move up. What we're looking to do is to be able to provide them with additional learning experiences over a period of years. So each year this position would continue to service them as a pre-K, as a K, as a 1, as a 2. So they're going to continue to get more and more exposure to STEM learning with this position. Right now, they would only get it when the teacher is able to break away from other curriculum to do a STEM activity within the classroom. This would be a real a planned curriculum that would go from pre-K all the way to 5, so they would learn a number of different, they'd be engaged in a number of different learning experiences all the way through, and they would get
To give you an example, we've just added STEM in the middle school this year. So the STEM activities they're doing are probably, for middle schoolers, basic STEM activities based on the fact that coming out of elementary school, they haven't had STEM exposure. If we're able to add STEM exposure, greater STEM exposure at the elementary school, now as they're coming to middle school, they're able to do more advanced STEM activities, which lead to more advanced STEM activities in high school and whatnot. So we're trying to have this kind of continuum of STEM activities throughout, and to have it start earlier so we're able to do more advanced stuff as you get older.
And have we found that these STEM activities help with our reading, our scores, as far as those standardized tests go?
So they would help them with the math and in the science piece of it, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
No one, again, we've had STEM at the high school for quite some time.
Yeah.
But we've had STEM at the middle school for 3 months now.
3 months right
So
now.
there's not a lot of empirical
Okay.
data.
Yeah, not a lot of time,
Yeah.
all right, all right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
The kids love it.
Yeah.
They love it. They absolutely love it, and all kids love it, which is interesting.
And it is a draw, because having the robotics class that we've now had at the high school, now we have kids in the middle school who are starting those things, and they can see, because quite honestly, the administration has done a very good job of presenting to the 8th graders, this is what you have to look forward to if you stay in Douglas. So as we have that through the middle school and into the high school, they're seeing what they can build on.
Right. So we've had robotics now, for this the second year we've had it. The numbers have increased dramatically. There is an interest for those students who may be a sophomore or junior who have taken the first piece of robotics. They'd like to take another course to continue to develop their skills. That would require us to make sure that we have a teaching assignment available that will allow us to offer a second course in robotics. So we're looking at that as another growth in the sciences. but not necessarily requiring an additional teaching staff. It would be someone picking up a second level of robotics without hiring another teacher for it. Capitalize on what's going well.
Anyone else from FinCom?
I just wanted to clarify just one thing, just another thing, based on your question earlier, in the interest of full disclosure, with regard to hiring staff. So anyone, para ABA, secretaries, custodians, the town does have a Worcester Regional Retirement Assessment aspect. Anybody who, all the teachers, psychologists, admin, all of those staff, which is most of the staff in the district, there is no payment in the town for any retirement. That's MTRS, and that's paid for by the state.
Okay.
Just in case you weren't aware of
Oh,
that.
thank you.
just so know.
Appreciate that.
Okay.
So I was wondering maybe a follow-up meeting, when you'd want to see us again, when we have some more solid numbers on our actual budget for next year. Do you want to see us back on this?
Well, I think we'd want to see that, for
Okay.
sure. I don't know that we've really scheduled our spring. Is that something, Matt, you and I would start to do tonight, or I left an email for Jean? Jean
That
wasn't
memo
available.
that I circulated at the beginning of the process is right here.
Okay, so
So
what
when's the earliest meeting we would be ready from your experience coordinate to
To
come
be
back here with a
perfectly
first
honest, I
pass
know
of
you
the
mentioned
budget?
February, I mean,
Is it more
we can make
March?
it like the very beginning of March
March,
even,
more March than-
yeah.
So
because
early March is
there's a
probably the
lot of
best
work
time to
that
come
goes
back.
into it.
The earliest time we could come back with, harder numbers on
Okay.
our budget for next year.
And as we head
We
toward-
originally asked for February 25th.
Okay,
Okay.
so.
Is that a date you might be able to hit?
Oh,
Or
yeah,
you want to go?
I'll have the budget prepared. Because everybody's gonna be sending it in now, I'll have all that done. But then there's a lot of work that goes on after that. We're going over it with Kevin and then meeting with the administrators. Then Kevin and I bring it to the
So there's a
school
refinement
committee.
process, but,
And then,
we'll first
budget
pass by that
subcommittee
first.
meetings
Yeah.
and determining the offsets. There's a
Yeah.
lot, we have to look at a lot of deliberation with regard to all of the,
How much
grant,
school
school
choice
choice,
you-
circuit breaker, preschool, athletic accounts, things of that nature.
I think
Well,
my
better idea,
goal
like
still is
Yeah,
what we
definitely,
talked
yeah.
about, to have the opportunity to see your real request, or incremental requests, as early in the process as you can get it to us, for
I
the
think
purpose of
definitely.
being able to.
We'll stick with February 25th.
Oh, yeah, we can do that, and then if,
Okay, I
and
would-
certainly
I
if
would
any
get it
changes
early.
have to be made on our end, we can just make them after that, just as long as you understand that, the
Of
school
course.
committee might make, but absolutely, we'd have the budget done by then, absolutely, no problem at all.
I think that would be the date then. we
Okay.
would look to set as Feb. 25.
All right,
All right.
sounds good.
Sounds good.
So we have more to our
Yes,
meeting.
so I'm gonna look for a motion
Oh, yeah.
to adjourn the school committee meeting at 8.
Before you adjourn,
Yeah.
thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great discussion.
So moved.
I have a motion from Kelly and a second from Lisa. All's in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. You're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And we actually have a few more paperwork events, but we're going to move those pretty quickly. Jean has made it very clear that she would like me to. Matt, we've got you here. Have you got anything you want to walk us through?
I do.
Before we can, have you head out?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
You wanna
You're up.
jump in?
You're
You wanna
up.
Call this new business?
New business. Go ahead.
So after all of what you've just heard and discussed, and there's a strategy for managing municipal finances, which I don't want to call it even a strategy, more of a tactic. It's just not that highfalutin. It's how can we, what is our rate limiting step? What is it that keeps us unable to simply say yes or no to good ideas or bad ideas? And it's the rate of growth in the town's revenues is the fundamental constraint. Whether or not our heart's desire is sustainable is the question we constantly grapple with. The towns, and I say this by way of helpful advice, I measure whether or not somebody understands Douglas's town finances by whether or not they complain about state aid. Because the fact of the matter is the town gets a tremendous amount of state aid. We're one of the most highly supported communities in the Commonwealth, and especially in terms of school aid. The bad news The good news is the taxpayer doesn't pay that. The bad news is that it doesn't grow. And so our levy is the part that has to grow to meet the growth of our underlying operational budget. So when you look at the revenue forecast for the town of Douglas, you're going to see that the average rate of growth year over year is 1.7%. And it's not entirely transparent from what you were presented this evening, but that $228,884 just from the teachers union organized employees is a 3% increase. So my message back to the town as we enter into this round of negotiations with teachers is we have an unsustainable compensation chart. We cannot continue to support the steps and COLAs and lanes in the existing contract formula and hope to keep pace with the rate of the revenue growth of the town. We'll always be having the same conversation. We have all the stuff we want to do, but the revenues are only going to grow so fast, so we're always perceived to be cutting. We always feel like we're cutting good ideas, not able to do the things we think are going to make us more competitive because we have a system in place where we're already outstripping our resources that we have. So there'll be a lot of ideas over the spring shared with our collective bargaining partners over how to address this. I've got my idea. I would rather have something that's high and grows very, very slowly than have something that we constantly needle down, but because of the agreements we make every year, it just keeps going like this. And because you get to the point where you just can't do it anymore, and I think that's where the town of Douglas was in 2016. Between your debt structure, your operational structure, and the compensation format that was being used on one side of the equation, you just ran out of resources. And the override was to provide a pivot point. It's a moment in time where a bunch of resources was freed up by the taxpayers, made available by the taxpayers, for some very strategic targeted investments. Make the capital investments in the operating base of the town to reduce future operating expenses. Be more efficient on how you use energy. If you can use technology to leverage out a human position, then do that. Make all those choices, and on their side, on the school side, target those things that will keep students here.
Yep.
Because there is definitely a net one-to-one benefit of that student not going to Norfolk and staying here, or attracting a student from out of district to come here and collecting that tuition. So there are a lot of good thinking is going on in the school committee. This is the last piece of it, which is, and I think it's incumbent upon Finance Committee and Board of Selectmen both to understand how our employment base is structured. Where are we in terms of, we have all these fancy charts and everything, but where are all the people? On their side, it's like this, okay? So they've got lots of new teachers coming in at low salaries and rapidly progressing through the chart. There's almost nobody in the middle, and there's a lot of people at the top. These people don't get steps. All they get is a COLA. But everybody else is getting really big steps. So how do we make that U-shaped curve distribution of employees work for the long term so that these investments can be made in a sustainable way? So we're not saying we're going to do it this year, but we're not sure about next year, because that's almost as bad as not doing it at all, in my mind. So how do we do it on the town side? We take our personnel budget. This is a best practice with the GFOA, the Government Finance Officials Association. It's a way of thinking about the budget. We always start off with our people. What is it going to cost our people? Because that's our primary commitment. And I think a lot of times, I know when I started off as a young analyst looking at budgets, I'd look at the personnel side and say, oh my God, they're going to spend $200,000 more this year. What the hell are they doing? Blah, blah, blah. Because that was a big number. When you start to break it down, and that's what this document is, the personnel supplement breaks it down to all of our salaries are public record. I'm not showing you anything that you can't see if you just ask our payroll department for it. But we take all of our policies in terms of the COLA, the steps, other incentives we have built into contracts, and let's cost them out. Why does the personnel budget in Douglas grow at what rate it grows at? And so I'm going to distribute this to you tonight with the hope that we'll have a conversation about it in the future. I am a month early with this because I'm a month late with capital. There's a reason for that. I'm on like page 50 of the capital plan. It's just a lot more thought is needed in it than I was prepared. And plus, being part of the negotiating team with the teachers, I needed to set capital aside and focus on personnel. The good news is we did this last year, so I had a template already. Basically, this supplement represents the detailed personnel budget requests of the administration. So we've gone through 5 or 6 rounds of edits with department heads. Gene and I have gone back and forth about 3 times on this to get really basically down to the dollar. What
Okay.
we expect to spend on each individual employee in their respective departments and what is driving the cost of the town. The town will be requesting, I'll round off the numbers to make it faster conversation, about $4.3 million for compensation for personnel. On the school side, the teachers alone are just about 8.1, to give you a sense of how they dwarf us, and then they've got all of their other employees. So they said 88% of their $13 million is people. With us, it's 33%, 32.7. This year's request represents a just about $106,000 increase over last year. That's a 2.5% increase, the smallest increase in the town's personnel budget since fiscal 2016. So catching up, going to full-time fire and ambulance, doing a bunch of other things that the town did in that time frame. We were typically growing 5% year over year. We're at 2.5%. One of the reasons for that is most of our employees are at the top step. We have a very expensive employee set, but year over year, it's very stable because a lot of people don't get steps. They get the COLA. So of the $106,000 increase, the COLA represents just about $68,000 of that. Steps, another $28,000. We have an agreement with the police union that should they successfully achieve accreditation as a department, they would get a 1% bonus to the base. That accreditation is the coin of the realm. I mean, it means you have a top shelf, fantastic police department. We want our people to aspire to excellence. So when we were negotiating the contract with them, we said, do this and we'll give you a $500 bonus immediately. We expect that is likely to be this fiscal year. The money's there for that. If it's not, there's free cash. It'll be covered. It's only $500 for 27 people, or 17, 15, 16 people. So that'll come out to, the 1% of the base is $9,200. Against that, we're going to save about $6,000 because we don't have a leap year in fiscal 21. Believe it or not, that one day we have police and fire working 24/7. So that extra day actually adds about $6,000 to them. So that's $98,000 of the $106,000 is easily explained, and the other $8,000 is from small changes in the way we've got more medics than we had. We used to have more pure firefighters who were EMT basics. As there's been change, we've recruited medics, so they're more expensive. That's about it. That's when I say sometimes a budget is actually, components of the budget are fairly simple. They are fairly simple. This is the part of the budget that is the least likely to change. Sure.
So is this homework for our next meetings?
If this is the part of the budget you have an interest in, then I would say, I hope this should answer almost all of your questions, and that you would forward me your questions before your next meeting so that we can be more efficient in our conversation. It's much easier for me to prepare answers than it is to answer on the fly.
Yeah.
These charts in the back here, though, just to walk you through it very quickly, disclose the employee, what budget account they're scored to, what grade and step they are on the compensation table, what their base was in the current fiscal year, and then how that base changes to the fiscal 21 base.
Matt, have you provided this to us the last couple of years? I don't remember getting down to this level of detail of the employees themselves.
Yeah, only
their
last
salaries and
year.
things like
Last
that.
year, Mr. Chairman, I did, but not to this level of detail. Last year was more summary than this.
Okay. So Dick, to your question, What I would suggest is there will be a day, this is basically something I would view under your auspices, correct? Dick, we can schedule a time, I don't know that it's got to be the next meeting, but where, same concept that Matt just said, I don't know about, do you really want to get inundated with a bunch of different people sending you direct emails of questions, or?
I mean, just to keep everything copacetic, I would hope that they would forward questions to the chair.
Yeah, I think what we'd do is, Dick, have a point where Matt might be scheduled again in a very, in a multi-layer meeting, where we might ask for 20 minutes. This strikes me as one of the most straightforward parts of the budgeting process, exactly what you said. These are all by contract, almost, correct?
Pretty much, yeah.
And there's very little would be able to change here. This is more informational. But to the extent we want to have Matt, homework, I'm not sure I want to spend the weekend reading through this. But if there's a time where we have more time to discuss it, with an earlier start and have a window, we might spend 20 more minutes on it, where people then have one to really take it home and look through it, then have a few questions.
And I think when your
Does that
department
make
heads
sense?
come in, this is your deep background for when you interview department heads.
Yep.
Because this is the major component of their budget. So you'll be able to say, you'll be well prepared to say, well, exactly how does this work to the police chief, if you have a question specific to the police chief.
I do. Have they done an analysis on overtime costs?
So I'll give you my take as somebody who's worked in a few different communities. I would have traded the overtime picture here for anything I had anywhere else. Just to give you, the last town I worked in, our firefighter overtime budget was over $500,000. We routinely, on every shift, a shift was 7, minimum manning was 7. We routinely had to backfill 2 positions every shift. So here, because you're full-time and call, it's not unusual for call people to backfill a shift. And that just kills overtime right there on the fire side. Then we have per diem staff, so they're not really call, but we have a deeper relationship with them. They're more steady with us, but they're not on our staff yet. And then there's lots of swaps that occur just to avoid the overtime altogether. So there's a small group of people that work there, so they help each other out. And that's on the fire side. So I've not encountered here what I've encountered in other places. 24-hour shifts help a lot with stopping the overtime usage, because when I swap with somebody, or if I'm going to bang out my time, it's 24. That's a big chunk of time. So it becomes more challenging to, if you're burning up 24 hours of sick time, you take one shift off. So it just becomes a disincentive. We use comp time, but we use it very, very sparingly, and it has to be utilized by the end of the year, or we pay it out. We don't have an overhang. So again, two towns ago, I worked in a city, and the comp time overhang was over $11 million. Now, it was a city, but still, it was just a draw on the budget that nobody had any control over. None of that happens here. On the police side, one of the reasons why we don't pursue some of the more cost-effective solutions to dispatch and whatnot is that the system has been built here in a don't argue with success, where trainees who want to be police officers come and work for the town of Douglas on the dispatch console. As part-time officers, they learn the ropes, they go through some training, and they start to backfill shifts for us. So a dispatcher will fill a shift where a full-time person is out, and then a part-time dispatcher is called in to fill the dispatcher's shift on the dispatch. That also works wonders. You're at just about $65,000 a year on a police budget of $1 million. So that's a very low proportion. Again, I'm used to seeing those numbers in 6 digits and sweating bullets trying to find a way to make it stop. And part of that is also just, frankly, the civic commitment.
That was 119.
119 for, yeah, what was the 68? Why am I remembering 68? Oh, those are the education incentives. So those are built into the, yeah, overtime, even at 119,
Okay. Okay.
I just, it's not anything I'm ever going to complain about. Some of what drives 119, 349 is the structure, like, again, we have very few young officers. We have quite a few that are at top step or approaching top step. They get first pick if they want. A lot of times at the overtime, so a little bit more expensive. Yeah, so the 62 is the Quinn, the remnants of the Quinn bill, which stuck in my mind. But yeah, 119, 349 is the overtime. That's an estimate. I would also want to answer your question. Jean's not here, but we should see if they actually spend that much. That's the budget.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the budgeted figure, so it's sort of all in. What's the worst case scenario? I don't know what the turn back is from the department.
Matt, if I can, you've handed me the memo from June 25th with some prospective dates on it, proposed dates. When do we start to really schedule the department heads?
So I'd leave that largely to you, how you want to fit that in. So this is where it gets tricky, right? Their expense budgets can be finalized in fairly quick order, or at least their requests can. I would say in January and early February, you should be able to have those conversations with department heads. It's just that final budget that rolls everything up and says, well, what changes would I have to make back in the things I already showed you? Because now I'm in the red because retirement came in high, insurance came in high, and I got to scrape together $80,000. Right? So maybe that's just what we do. At the end, we say, this is how we came in for insurance, this is how we came in for retirement, and our suggested cuts are as follows, and that's the end of the budget process.
So for me,
Rather than us doing it on our side, we do it here.
as the first year as chair, one of the things I've found is things used to happen by magic. And I would show up and the magic would happen. There would be people there to speak to us. And now I find that actually has to be arranged, apparently. How do we arrange to have specific heads come in?
As far as we're concerned, they're at your beck and call. So as long as you provide adequate notice. So if you want to set out a schedule now, and we can just schedule them in, the more difficult are those department heads like Bill Cundiff,
Yep.
who has many night meetings here.
Yep.
To try to give the guy a break. But with our public safety chiefs, they can be here.
How many heads are there altogether? More or less?
So I will concede, without Jean here,
7, 9.
Jean's part of the magic.
Jean is the magic. She
Right.
sets up the schedule.
Yeah,
Is it like
she's,
10 or?
Yeah, I was gonna say, that.
dozen,
It
or-
seems like 10 or
Yes,
12,
yeah.
13, maybe, right?
Well, it depends
And
on how, so every one of these charts is technically a department
Yes.
that, in the
Right.
chart of accounts.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily treat them that way because some of them are just so small. To me, the majors are true public safety, highway,
Yeah.
finance,
We
community
kinda get to
development,
pick
and the assessors.
who we think we want to see.
7.
And there's traditionally been a certain group, like you said, fire, police. But I couldn't list that group off the top of my head. Jean could. Matt can't at the moment, and I respect that. I get that. But in terms of, so the next meeting looks like it should be, like it's tentatively set, again, trying to crisscross so you're not conflicting with Board of Selectmen meetings. So the next meetings we've got on here are January 14 and I think January 28.
Correct.
Okay? And so what I'd like to do is have FinCom have those as meeting dates. And what I'll look to do with Jean, my view would be some of the first groups that I think can come in tend to be fire and police. They
Well,
tend to be
biggest.
year over year.
Yeah.
They tend to be very similar, very straightforward. They're good groups to see what they're doing, any changes they want. Year over year, I've seen them have if you will, somewhat big requests, whether equipment or just changing from part-time to full-time. So I think I'll reach out to Jean, but my lead-in would probably be, if they're available, January 14 to do fire and police. And then I'll talk with her and be ready on the 14th with the rest of the committees, and we can talk about who would want to see when Jean will have a better idea of when they might be available and start to lead them in. My experience the last couple of years was I thought, got into kind of a late start, a late roll. And boy, in March I think last year in March we met at least 3 times, right?
We were scrambling.
Yeah, and so it's easier. Some of these groups, you can spend a lot of time with them in front of you, and in the long run, there are very few year-over-year changes that really have to be discussed. So I'd like to
In your
probably
defense
start.
last year, you ran into some terrible weather
Well,
and some illnesses that prevented you from getting a quorum, so
yeah.
it wasn't by design that we
No.
went in March,
It's
it was.
But I'd rather, so schedule January 14, January 28. January 14, I think you should anticipate, to the extent they're available, fire and police. And then we'll also talk that night about the other groups and who we want in. You mentioned earlier groups that are foreign for me in the sense of the pension group, people like that I've never seen on FinCom. And you said, boy, I think it's a great idea that FinCom should see them. Okay, I want to see them.
Yeah.
We want to see them. Or we'll talk on the 14th about what we want to do, but you should be, how do we
Were
get?
you on the committee when Chairman Hogan when Ryan was the chair?
I was.
Because he always had the pension fund come.
Oh, then they were
early.
fascinating. I remember them wholeheartedly.
No, they can put snails to sleep, but
Well-
unfortunately, here's the problem. And I think it becomes a management problem for every responsible committee in town. Finance Committee, Budget, Board of Selectmen, and
Yep.
me and Jean. It's a critically underfunded plan. It's horrible. Their financial condition is absurd. I think at one point he was saying 43%. And that's, fully funded by 2028, yeah, if you beat the living snot out of all your members. So that's a conversation that needs to occur, because there may be some, believe me, I won't rule out any option for the town that's advisable. And at some point, you just have to look at these guys and say, wait a minute, you're critically underfunded at 43%, and you just had an election for a board of directors where people got elected saying they were going to give pensioners a COLA? But yeah, come on. So that's just, they need to hear it from you guys, whether you believe in that stuff or not, rather than just me and Jean.
And this is the pension that you're talking about, the 43% funded?
I think they were 43% the last time they were here, and that was a couple of years ago.
But I
I
think
look at that and I say, even in lackadaisical states, they'd be shut down.
But I think of a department, and I think of the fire department, boom, 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 the fire chief comes in, and he talks about the fire chief, the fire
Sure.
department, okay? Pension, I don't know what that is. Is that a department? Is there a little chief of pension?
It's an expense.
No,
It's a-
no, I'm sorry. Like I'm a 6-year-old, all right? If I want to see people talk to us about the Douglas Pension Fund and cost and expense, who is that?
It's their board.
The board,
What board?
That they have a board, a governing board for the pension fund.
They-
now that's
they're
a
the one-
state, that's a state.
No, it's the
pension?
county, Greater Worcester County.
It's the consortium that the teachers are in, correct? Or is it
Okay.
all?
No, municipal employees
All
and
municipal employees.
non-teacher school employees.
Yeah.
But Douglas doesn't have the Douglas Board of Pension Management.
We don't.
Department.
We probably wouldn't be in this condition if we did. So, but what it is, it's the bill,
Who
They give us a
comes
bill.
to see
It's-
us?
their leadership.
Who's they?
Their
Worcester
board.
County.
Board, I don't know their names.
Worcester
It's like-
County.
it's
Worcester
like
County
a
Pension
board.
Board.
County Pension
That's what I'm
Board.
trying to get at.
It's a huge part of our budget that, and if they're talking a significant
That's
increase,
fine.
what are you gonna cut?
Okay, so we can
Or
get a
How have you
person,
gotten to this point, and what is your forecast?
so
Because
we
that's,
can get a
Association.
person from the Worcester County
Mr. Blanchett used to come.
Pension
He has
Group
recently departed, so.
to
Yeah.
talk
How
to us
woefully
about
He won't
underfunded
be here
are
then.
you? Are you acutely
Are you
aware of
getting
what you're
that
doing to the?
person for us? Are you
Yeah,
getting that
Gene and I
person?
will,
Would people like to see that person?
Oh, yes, I would love to see
Why
it.
don't we schedule them for January 28th? Be
she's
shy.
like-
Just
Be
give
shy.
me your
Heather.
questions, I'll be all,
Heather, you be shy about it, all right?
Nice.
but it's a big portion of the budget. And if it's gonna be a significant increase, it means the stuff that you wanna do
Right.
for the schools.
We all need to have experts within,
Oh, I have a lot
you're the
of
chief.
words.
I don't have that one.
But not
I don't have that
now.
one. So we'd like to, now, be nice.
here's the problem. It's hard to do research because you try to get their stuff online and you can't. So the
Jan
lack of
28th,
transparency is had.
January 28th
Yeah.
for a pension person.
Howard, will we need a whole night just to do the school, probably?
The school looks like it's coming in Feb 25. I got a little packet here from BVT. Typically, they both come the same night. Okay?
If there's no new subjects, I hate to say it, but I have a pickup that I gotta do. I have a child waiting in the
We'll lose
cold, I
our
think.
quorum.
Oh, okay, well then, I'm gonna stay then.
All right, hold on.
I'm done.
All right, so I need to, if I can take 5 minutes.
I'm right here.
And we're going to speed read through,
Oh,
but we're
no,
going to read
It's not
them.
gonna be, no, like, it's gonna last minute.
Ready?
Howard's
So we're
throwing it.
gonna review the minutes from the October 8th meeting. Pass them
Yes.
down,
Yeah.
review them, and I'll entertain a motion to approve them.
Yes. Now, I thought we had a couple of these to do. I know there was one where I was not there, and it didn't say absent.
I move they be approved, Mr. Chairman.
I would look for a second.
Second,
Okay, all those in favor of approving the October 8th meeting, say aye.
aye.
All those opposed? Okay, they are approved. Let's go to the,
Actually, you pass out a packet of, Mr. Chair.
what's that?
Okay,
They,
yeah, I see
they're
this
all
one.
in separate packets, so.
Is that what's
each
going on?
need- Yes, so you
That's
just,
special.
yes.
Got it, okay.
So we need a whole packet, sir.
Okay, all right, ready? 1, 2, 3.
That's why.
Can this,
It's
can this,
Ready?
Not a whole
Yep, I got
as
it.
a, as
Yep.
way of future approvals, can these be like communicated to us electronically prior to the event so we can take 5 minutes to actually look at them? Is that possible?
At the next meeting, why don't you bring that up?
Okay, I'll do that.
The man that just wanted to leave as
Oh.
quickly as he could.
I want to leave, but yeah, so I'm trying to get my, I love to do reading of these FinCom minutes at night, you know, because they're very,
Right.
they're very riveting. And-
Okay, I've got the October 29th meeting minutes.
Oh, yeah, this is what.
Who types these up anyway? How's this work?
This is the sewer.
Who's our recording secretary?
I sign the check for her
Mary
every
Wright.
couple, yeah. I come in and sign. I enter a motion to approve the October 29th meetings.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the October 29th meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the October 29th minutes are approved. Okay, and we've got the November 18th meeting minutes. This was the meeting right before the special town meeting.
Yep.
Please take a look, see if there's anything that needs to be changed.
Oh, yeah.
So who types these up again? How does this work?
She listens to it and then she types them up.
So, okay,
Recording.
okay, the recording, all right, and that's how they do the recording, people type it, based on how that works, okay.
Move we approve, Mr. Chair.
I've got a motion, looking for a second.
Second,
All those in favor of approving the November 18th minutes? Aye.
aye.
All those opposed? The November 18th meeting minutes are approved. For the next meeting that is scheduled for January 14th at 7, I'll get an email out on this for the 14th and the 28th. And I'll try to get better on giving you guys updates on the meetings ahead of time and reminders. And you and I are going to talk about, not tonight, about getting fire and police on January 14, pension on January 28. On January 14, we'll address a heading forward schedule of who we want to see. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Oh, you can't move it until someone seconds it.
No,
He
I made the motion.
made the motion.
Oh, he made the motion to second.
No.
Dick made the motion to adjourn. Would anyone like to second it, Phil?
Aren't you supposed to second it? I didn't know. I'm trying to follow
Thank
the
you, Sandy.
procedures.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, Phil?
I'm opposed.
4-1 in favor, it passes.
It's just a little wrinkle, the motion to adjourn does
trying to
not
understand
require a second.
Is that